Tessa Roy worked as a contract reviewer for a mid-sized logistics company called Transglobal Aid. Her job was boring but steady. She read hundreds of pages of agreements between her employer and international humanitarian organizations. Most clauses were standard. Payment terms, delivery deadlines, liability waivers. But one Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing a new contract worth nearly $300 million, she found something wrong. Buried on page 47, between a force majeure clause and a dispute resolution paragraph, was a single sentence that did not belong. It said that 10% of all funds designated for humanitarian aid could be redirected to operational expenses defined solely by the service provider. Tessa read it 3 times. Operational expenses was a vague term. It could mean anything. Fuel, salaries, or private accounts. She knew that in the aid industry, such a clause was illegal. Donor funds had to be tracked with full transparency. She printed the page and highlighted the sentence. Then she went to her boss, a man named Richard Cole. Richard was the head of compliance. He had always seemed honest, if a bit tired. Tessa showed him the clause. Richard read it in silence. His face went pale. He told her to say nothing to anyone and that he would handle it internally. He took the printed page and locked it in his desk drawer. Tessa returned to her cubicle, uneasy. The next morning, Richard Cole was found dead in his apartment. The police said it was suicide. He had left a note confessing to financial misconduct. Tessa did not believe it for 1 second. The news of Richard Cole's death spread quickly through the office. Most employees accepted the suicide story. Richard had been under pressure lately. His wife had left him. His finances were a mess. But Tessa knew something they did not. The clause she had found was not a minor error. It was a trapdoor designed to steal millions from disaster relief funds. And Richard had taken the only copy she had printed. Or so she thought. That evening, Tessa stayed late. She went back to the original digital contract file on the company server. She scrolled to page 47. The clause was gone. In its place was a standard expense reporting paragraph. She checked the file's modification history. Someone had overwritten the contract at 3 a.m, just hours after Richard's death. The username was Richard's. But Richard was already dead by 3 a.m. The medical examiner had placed his time of death around 11 the previous night. Someone had used Richard's credentials to edit the file after his death. That meant the killer had access to Richard's passwords. Or the killer was someone with administrator privileges. Tessa made a copy of the file's metadata and saved it to a USB drive. She also checked the audit logs. The person who edited the file logged in from an IP address inside the company's headquarters. The same building where she was sitting. Tessa looked around the empty office. The lights were on motion sensors. Most of them had already turned off. She was alone. Or so she thought. A cold draft moved through the hallway. A floorboard creaked somewhere behind her. Tessa turned off her monitor and crouched under her desk. She heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. They stopped near Richard's old office. A door opened and closed. Then silence. Tessa waited 5 minutes before crawling out. She grabbed her bag and the USB drive and left through the stairwell, not the elevator. Outside, the street was cold and wet. She walked 6 blocks before calling a taxi. She went home to her small apartment on the east side. She locked the door, pushed a chair against it, and sat on her bed with her laptop. She searched for Ivan Bell. He was the CEO of Transglobal Aid. A tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a calm voice. He had founded the company 12 years ago. It had grown quickly, winning contracts from the United Nations and several large charities. Ivan Bell was respected. He gave interviews about ethical logistics. He wrote op-eds about transparency. But Tessa had seen his signature on the contract with the hidden clause. He had approved it. She checked his biography online. Before founding Transglobal Aid, Ivan Bell had worked for a private military contractor. That company had been investigated for money laundering. The case was closed without charges. Tessa felt a cold knot in her stomach. She was not dealing with a simple fraud. She was dealing with a man who had connections, experience, and no hesitation to kill. Tessa knew she could not go to the police without proof. The only copy of the original contract was gone from the server. But she remembered something. Richard Cole had printed the page. He had locked it in his desk drawer. If the police had not taken it, the printed page might still be there. She decided to return to the office the next morning before anyone else arrived. She woke at 4. She dressed in dark clothes and took a bus. At 5:30, she entered the building using her security badge. The system logged her entry. She could not avoid that. But she hoped to be fast. Richard's office was on the 3rd floor. The door was locked with a police seal. Tessa broke the seal with a fingernail. She knew that was a crime. She did not care. Inside, the desk drawer was still locked. She used a paperclip to pick the simple lock. The drawer opened. Inside were Richard's personal effects. A watch. A photo of his ex-wife. And the printed page with the highlighted clause. Tessa folded the page and put it in her pocket. She relocked the drawer, resealed the door as best she could, and left. As she walked through the lobby, she saw a security guard she did not recognize. He watched her with empty eyes. She nodded and walked out. 15 minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "Return what you took. You have 6 hours." Tessa did not reply. She turned off her phone and removed the battery. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. Tessa needed a place to hide. She could not go home. She could not go to a hotel using her credit card. Ivan Bell's people would find her. She thought of an old friend from college, a woman named Maya Kaur who lived across the city. Maya was a graphic designer who worked from home. She owed Tessa a favor from years ago. Tessa took 3 different buses to avoid being followed. She arrived at Maya's apartment building at 8 in the morning. Maya let her in without many questions. Tessa explained she was in trouble but did not give all the details. Maya offered her couch and coffee. Tessa sat down and opened her laptop. She scanned the printed page she had taken from Richard's desk. The clause was clear. But a single page was not enough to prove intent. She needed the original contract file before it was overwritten. That file existed somewhere. Every digital document leaves traces. Hard drives have shadow copies. Backup servers retain old versions. The company's IT department would have backups. But she could not walk into IT and ask for help. She needed someone on the inside. She searched her memory. A man named Derek Vance worked in IT. He had helped her fix her computer once. He seemed decent. She found his personal email address on a company directory. She wrote a short message, "Derek, I need a favor. Do you have access to old versions of contract files? It is urgent. Lives depend on it. Meet me at the library on 5th Street at noon. Come alone." She sent the email from a burner account and waited. Derek Vance showed up at the library 10 minutes early. He was a thin man with glasses and a nervous smile. He sat across from Tessa at a long wooden table. She showed him the printed clause. She told him about Richard's death and the altered file. Derek listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Ivan Bell fired the previous IT director last month. He put his own man in charge. All backup logs are now restricted. But I know a way. The old backup server is still physically connected. It is in a closet on the 4th floor. The door lock is broken. I can get you in tonight after most staff leave. But you have to do the searching. I cannot be seen with you." Tessa agreed. Derek gave her the server's address on the network and an administrator password that had not been changed. He warned her that the backup server was slow. Searching for the old version of a single contract might take hours. Tessa said she had no choice. They parted ways. Tessa returned to Maya's apartment. She spent the afternoon preparing a list of file names and dates. The original contract had been uploaded 6 weeks ago. The version before the overwrite would have a timestamp of 2 days before Richard's death. She needed that specific file. At 8 that evening, she took a taxi to the company headquarters. She wore a hoodie and kept her face down near the cameras. Derek had left the back door unlocked. She slipped inside and climbed the stairs to the 4th floor. Her heart pounded with every step. The 4th floor was dark. The motion sensors had turned off the lights. Tessa used her phone as a flashlight. She found the closet Derek had described. The door was indeed broken. She pulled it open. Inside was a single metal rack holding 3 old servers. The fans hummed loudly. She connected her laptop to the backup server using an Ethernet cable. She typed the administrator password Derek had given her. It worked. She navigated through folders organized by date. The server was painfully slow. Each click took 10 seconds. She found the contracts folder for the past 2 months. There were hundreds of files. She searched for the specific contract number. The server took 3 minutes to return results. Finally, a list of versions appeared. The most recent version was dated the night Richard died. The previous version was dated 2 days earlier. That was the one she needed. She downloaded it. The file was large, over 50 megabytes. The transfer progress bar moved 1% every 30 seconds. Tessa watched the door. The building was silent. At 47%, she heard footsteps in the hallway. She froze. The footsteps stopped outside the closet. A shadow passed under the door. Someone was standing there. Tessa held her breath. The doorknob turned slowly. But the lock was broken. The door began to open. She grabbed a metal cable from the server rack and held it like a weapon. The door swung open. A security guard stood there. The same man she had seen in the lobby that morning. He looked at her. He looked at the laptop. He said nothing. The silence was unbearable. The security guard reached for his radio. Tessa knew that if he called for backup, she would be caught. She dropped the metal cable and said, "Ivan Bell killed Richard Cole. I have proof. If you call this in, you become an accessory." The guard hesitated. His hand hovered over the radio. Tessa continued, "I am not a thief. I am trying to expose a crime. Millions of dollars meant for starving children are being stolen. Help me, and you will be a hero. Stop me, and you will be on the wrong side of history." The guard lowered his hand. He looked at the server, then at Tessa's laptop. The download was at 72%. He said, "You have 10 minutes. Then I walk away and forget I saw you. But if anyone asks, I was never here." Tessa nodded. The guard left, closing the door behind him. The download finished at 98% with 4 minutes left. She disconnected the laptop, packed her bag, and slipped out of the closet. She took the stairs down to the ground floor. The back door was still unlocked. She stepped outside into the cold night air. She walked 10 blocks before calling a taxi. Back at Maya's apartment, she opened the downloaded file. It was the original contract. Page 47 contained the hidden clause. And the digital signature on the first page belonged to Ivan Bell. She had the proof. But she also knew that Ivan Bell would stop at nothing to destroy it. She stayed awake the rest of the night. Tessa needed to get the evidence to someone who could act on it. The police were risky. Ivan Bell had friends in high places. She decided to contact a journalist named Sarah Vane. Sarah wrote for an international news outlet that had exposed corporate corruption before. Tessa found her email address on the outlet's website. She sent a brief message, "I have proof that Transglobal Aid's CEO diverted humanitarian funds and murdered a compliance officer. I need protection. I can meet you anywhere." 2 hours later, Sarah Vane replied. She wanted to meet at a train station the next morning at 6. Tessa agreed. She spent the night making multiple copies of the original contract. She put one copy on a cloud server with a delayed release. She put another copy on a USB drive hidden in her shoe. She gave a third copy to Maya in a sealed envelope with instructions to mail it to a judge if Tessa did not call by noon. At 5 in the morning, Tessa left Maya's apartment. She took a bus, then a taxi, then walked 10 minutes to the train station. The station was nearly empty. She saw a woman in a blue coat holding a newspaper. The woman approached her. "Tessa?" she asked. Tessa nodded. Sarah Vane led her to a bench near the ticket machines. Tessa handed her the USB drive. Sarah plugged it into her tablet and read the contract. Her expression hardened. She said, "This is massive. But I need more. I need you to go on the record. On camera. Can you do that?" Tessa took a deep breath. She said yes without hesitation. Sarah Vane arranged for a safe house. It was a small apartment above a bakery in a different part of the city. 2 security guards watched the entrance. Tessa stayed there for the next 24 hours. Sarah brought a camera crew. Tessa gave a recorded interview. She explained everything. The hidden clause. Richard Cole's death. The altered file. The backup server. The security guard who let her go. Sarah asked about Ivan Bell. Tessa described his calm demeanor and his past with the military contractor. The interview lasted 2 hours. Sarah promised to air the story within 48 hours. But she warned Tessa that Ivan Bell would try to stop it. He might use lawyers. He might use threats. He might use violence. Tessa said she did not care. That night, she could not sleep. She watched the door and listened to every sound. At 2 in the morning, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: "You have made a serious mistake. Withdraw your statement or you will disappear like Richard." Tessa did not reply. She forwarded the text to Sarah Vane. Sarah sent it to her legal team. The next morning, Sarah called with bad news. Ivan Bell had filed a defamation lawsuit against Tessa. He was also seeking a court order to seize her devices. The judge was someone he had donated money to. The hearing was scheduled for that afternoon. Tessa had 3 hours to decide: fight or flee. She chose to fight. Tessa asked Sarah to find a lawyer. Sarah called a woman named Helena Ross, a civil rights attorney known for taking on powerful clients. Helena agreed to represent Tessa pro bono. They met at the courthouse an hour before the hearing. Helena reviewed the evidence. She smiled. "This contract is a bomb. Ivan Bell is trying to silence you because he knows he will go to prison. In court, I will ask for an independent forensic examination of the company's servers. He will refuse, and that refusal will destroy his credibility." The hearing began at 2 o'clock. Ivan Bell sat across the room with 3 expensive lawyers. He did not look at Tessa. The judge, an older man named Fowler, seemed impatient. Ivan Bell's lawyers argued that Tessa had stolen company property and made false accusations. Helena argued that Tessa was a whistleblower protected by law. She presented the original contract with the hidden clause. The judge looked at it. He asked Ivan Bell's lawyers to explain the clause. They could not. Helena then played a recording of Tessa's interview where she described Richard Cole's death. The judge's expression changed. He denied the order to seize Tessa's devices. He also ordered a full investigation into transglobal AIDS contracts. Ivan Bell stood up and left the courtroom without a word. Outside, Tessa thanked Helena. But she knew the fight was not over. Ivan Bell had lost a battle, not the war. The real danger was still out there. The news story aired the next night. Sarah Vane's report included Tessa's interview, the original contract, and the timeline of Richard Cole's death. It also revealed that the police had reopened Richard's case as a homicide. The medical examiner found new evidence. The bruising on Richard's neck was not consistent with suicide. Someone had strangled him and staged the hanging. The police arrested Ivan Bell 2 days later. He was charged with murder, fraud, and money laundering. His lawyers argued that he was innocent. But the evidence was overwhelming. The hidden clause was written by a consultant who confessed under pressure. The consultant said Ivan Bell had ordered it. The backup server logs showed that someone using the CEO's credentials had overwritten the contract. And the security camera footage from the night Richard died showed Ivan Bell entering Richard's apartment building. He had forgotten to disable that camera. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Tessa testified on the 3rd day. She kept her voice steady. She looked at Ivan Bell. He stared back with cold eyes. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. They found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. As he was led away, he turned to Tessa and said, "This is not over." But Tessa knew it was. For her, at least. She had done what Richard could not. She had exposed the truth and survived. The aftermath was quiet. Tessa received a Whistleblower award from an international anti-corruption organization. She donated the money to humanitarian aid groups. She did not return to Transglobal Aid. The company was dissolved. New leadership took over the contracts. The aid funds were restored. Tessa moved to a different city. She found a new job reviewing contracts for a small nonprofit. The work was boring again. She preferred it that way. Every few months, she received a letter from Ivan Bell in prison. She never opened them. She burned each one without reading. Richard Cole's ex-wife sent Tessa a thank you note. She said Richard had spoken highly of Tessa before he died. That meant more to Tessa than any award. One evening, she walked home under a gray sky. She thought about the hidden clause on page 47. A single sentence that had nearly destroyed so many lives. She wondered how many other clauses were hidden in other contracts, waiting to be found. She decided to keep reviewing. It was not glamorous work. But it mattered. Tessa Roy was not a detective or a hero. She was just a person who refused to look away. And sometimes, that was enough to change the world.